Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where in today's episode, it's all about horrible parents, guys. And OP tells a story about the time a Karen lets her son run absolutely wild, guys, and they get taught a lesson. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So here is a little background. I'm a teacher, and I love listening to these stories. As being a teacher, you have to deal with a lot of entitled people and their children. This story is about an entitled teacher that I had the displeasure of working with a long time ago. With that said, the school I used to teach at has one of the best underage bands in the city. They perform at big places, and they draw in huge audiences. So anyways, there's this Karen, who's a teacher, and her daughter, who we'll call Emily, that goes to the school. Now, the daughter is a relatively good student, but she's a bad singer. There's no two ways about it. One day, the band's pianist, Kyle, fake name, is fuming during the bus ride back. On being asked, he begins to rant how Karen forced the music teacher to put her daughter on the set list. They had a show in the city's biggest mall the next week, and they had been practicing for months. And Karen wanted her daughter Emily to sing for that show. So fast forward, and it's the day of the show. I'm watching from the audience, and the first 7 songs bring a huge audience, and everybody enjoys the amazing music. And then it's Emily's turn. The guitarist starts playing the opening notes of a very popular song, and the crowd goes wild. That's when Emily starts singing, and the enthusiasm drained away fast. There's silence as Karen's daughter just massacres an amazing song. Then at the end, where there were muted claps, Karen gets up and she starts clapping loudly, cheering and wooing her daughter, and everyone's just mortified. Some people start to awkwardly clap due to this. Meanwhile, the teacher tried to move to the next song as quickly as possible. But that's not the most entitled part yet. Karen then has the nerve to yell, "Wait, they haven't clapped for my daughter's performance yet. I don't hear many of you clapping." And hearing that, the audience is dumbfounded. Emily then yells into the microphone, "Clap for me." Nobody moves a muscle, and she runs off stage crying. Meanwhile, Mommy Dearest shouts, "You can't appreciate talent," before chasing after her daughter. The concert did continue, and Emily left the band. And as far as I know, Karen's still in the school teaching. Again, her daughter was a wonderful student, just not a great singer. Honestly guys, I don't know whether or not Karen pulled a good mom move or not. Like, on one hand, she does support her daughter and probably makes the kid feel wonderful about her singing voice. But at the same time, you kind of have to be realistic about things, right? Like, recognizing that your child might not be cut out for singing in front of hundreds of people is also something you gotta take into consideration. And Emily not getting those claps and crying after that performance and potentially feeling humiliated might not have been the best thing to let happen to her. And thankfully, she wasn't up there performing in front of liquored up savages. That would have been horrifying. So before I begin, the area I lived in when I was younger had no shortage of entitled people to go with it. Now, I'm not saying it's filled to the brim with these types of people, but you'd be surprised if you didn't encounter one if you were over there. I also have a younger stepsister. She was around 9 when this happened, and at the time, I was 16 years old. We're both in our 20s now. This happened while my mother and stepfather were visiting some distant relatives, and me and my sister were staying with my grandpa during that time. So school was over for the day, so I went to go pick up my sister Mel. Grandpa called and he told me he's not home since he was helping a friend build a playhouse for their grandkid. I told him not to worry, and I asked if I could take Mel to the mall, and that we could meet up there since his friend didn't live too far from there. Grandpa said sure, and told me to be careful. So I took Mel there, and we had a lot of fun. We went to a bunch of places, like gaming stores, toy shops, ice cream, etc. Eventually, Mel decided that she wanted to go play at the in-mall playground. So I take her there and told her to have fun, and that if she needed me or anything, just shout my name. She nods, and she went off to play with the other kids. I went over to a nearby bench and I sat down. I made sure to constantly glance at Mel to make sure she's okay, and that she didn't get hurt or anything. At one point, I spot one of my friends from high school named Zoe. She sat down next to me and she asked how everything's going. I told her everything's good. I was taking my sister to the mall. We kept talking for a bit until at one point I hear an ear-piercing screech. I immediately turn over and I see this kid, roughly the same age as my sister, with one of his arms around my sister and the other trying to shove up her shirt. Of course, that caused my overprotective brother mode to activate because I just rushed over there with Zoe following behind, and I immediately wrestle my sister away from that kid. The kid got pissed and he tried to grab my sister again, but I swat his hand away, and that did not sit well with this creepy kid. That's when he starts crying and screaming. Meanwhile, me and Zoe are trying to calm my sobbing sister. Well, about 10 seconds after the kid was screaming his head off, his entitled Karen mom shows up, looking like she was about to rip somebody's face off. She screams and says, "Who the F made my son cry? Was it you?" Looking directly at me. Her son just points at me and says, "It was them, mommy. They're taking my girlfriend from me." At that, she starts screaming at me saying, "What the hell did you do to my kid? Why is he crying? If you hit him, I swear I will." I just interrupt her and say, "He was the one grabbing my sister. Your son was trying to pull up her shirt." At that, Karen says, "I didn't ask you what my son did. You did something to my son to make him cry. What did you do?" At that, I just roll my eyes. Clearly, confrontation with this woman is inevitable. She then tells me, "He was just playing. What the F is wrong with you?" That's when my friend Zoe comes in and says, "Trying to pull up her shirt qualifies as playing? I would say that's harassment, sexual." That's when Karen interrupts her and says, "Harassment? Don't you dare exaggerate. He's a kid. He wasn't harassing anyone. Don't you dare." I tell Karen he had his hand under my sister's shirt. Like, what the F did you teach your kid? Karen just responds, "Are you telling me how to parent my child?" I tell her, "No, but I think somebody should since you clearly aren't really good at it." And that sends her into a rage, and she starts shouting obscenities and other nonsense. During the whole crap show, one of the adults in the play area must have called security because they came here eventually. Security says, "Okay, everybody calm down. What happened here?" I start to explain, and obviously Karen cuts me off and says, "This boy hit my son and made him cry. Do something." Security asks me if that's true, and I tell him, "No, her son stuck his hand under my sister's shirt. I was trying to protect her." My friend Zoe says, "I can vouch for that. He didn't lay a hand on her kid." Hearing that, Karen screams and calls us effing little liars. And she says, "Your parents must have done a garbage job of raising you if you are going to lie to a security guard. And even if my son did try to grab her, who cares? He's 9. Are you really going to scold a 9-year-old who doesn't know better?" Security tells her to calm down, and she says, "Calm down? He hit my child. Aren't you listening?" I tell her I didn't. Ask everybody around here. They saw the whole thing happen. And sure enough, the people who saw the ordeal started stepping up to confirm my story, and even mentioned who the entitled mom screamed and shouted at. Security just says, "Okay, miss, well, everybody's saying that you initiated this situation, not to mention your kid was doing something that qualifies as sexual harassment." Of course, Karen says, "Lies. They attacked me. They attacked my child." And security just tells her, "Then why is everybody here saying otherwise?" Karen, of course, could not come up with a good reason, so we ignored her, and I went to comfort Mel again, with Karen shouting that she won't leave until she gets an apology. Around this time is when my grandpa calls and told me he's outside the entrance to the mall, which is where the playground is. I told him I was near the playground and to come immediately because something bad's going down. When he got to us, he asked us what happened, and Karen, probably noticing my grandpa thinking he was my dad or something, came over and starts screaming at him saying, "Is this your son? I'll have you know that he hit my son." Grandpa just ignored her, and he asked me what happened, and I basically brought him up to speed on the whole shebang. That got him pretty riled up as he's very protective of his family. Grandpa tells her, "So do you often let your kid feel up anyone at the playgrounds?" Karen just says, "My kid did nothing of that sort. Even if he did, he's 9. Look at him. He did nothing wrong." Again, Zoe tells her, "Lady, he touched her inappropriately." And Karen says, "Oh, stop with that BS. He's a kid. He doesn't know any better." Grandpa just tells her, "And that's why it's your job to make sure he does know better. But it seems you failed in that regard." And that just incites more screaming, to which the security guard tells her to shut up or he'll throw her out. He basically said to Karen, either you leave or we'll have the police haul your ass out for disturbance of the peace and harassment. What do you want to do? Karen just screams, this isn't fair. I demand he apologize for hitting my son. And after that didn't work, she just left, as she was told. My sister was a bit wary around boys after that, but she eventually got over it, and now it's just a funny memory we like to laugh at. So yeah, I think we can all agree that that's terrible parenting on Karen's part. And also, 9-year-olds are old enough to know what they're doing, Karen. And shame on her for playing that he's young, he doesn't know any better card. Well, frickin' teach your 9-year-old son, because 4-year-olds are able to comprehend boundaries. Like, I'm just shocked that the whole time she totally disregarded the fact that her son was being a grabby brat, and she just fixated on, why did you make him cry? What did you do? My son's frickin' perfect. Like, this is the type of parent who will keep making excuses for the rest of her son's life as his behavior increases in severity. And who knows, he might end up in prison and mom will still think he's an angel. And if you think that was wild, guys, listen to this next one. Here's some background. I teach Kenpo Karate as a 2nd degree black belt. I also have an assistant named Kira, a 1st degree black belt in her own right. I don't own the gym, but my instructor does, but since he's gotten older, me and Kira handle the younger classes, while he handles the business side of things, plus adult class. Now we have 3 classes. There's the kids class, which is ages 5 to 10, intermediate class, ages 11 to 15, and the adult class, which is 16 and up. So with that said, here's the main story. So kids class had just ended when a woman walks in with her son. She says that her 13-year-old son wants to take karate lessons. So I shake hands with her and I have her sit down with my instructor to fill out the waivers. That's when other students file in for the intermediate class, and me and Kira get down to business. I take the bulk of the class, which is around 15 kids, while Kira goes with the new students one-on-one to teach them basic strikes and stances. Not 5 minutes later, I hear Kira upset, telling the new boy to do 10 push-ups. And I'm wondering why. Well, he called Kira, who's essentially a volunteer, an effing bitch to her face. That's when Karen, the mother, stands up and she says her son's not allowed to do push-ups as she doesn't want her son to be sore. So Kira lets him do the push-ups on his knees, but not 5 minutes later, she makes him do 20 more since he's now called her another name. And for reference, Kira's in her early 20s and the boy's like 13 years old. Not to mention, there's other parents and kids here as well. It's very inappropriate to have somebody just name-calling instructors. So that's when I walk over and I ask Kira to switch with me. As she does, she gives me the bug eyes and she mouths, "What the F?" So I walk over and I ask the boy why he insulted Kira. He said he doesn't like girls. When I asked him what he meant, he says he only listens to his dad or other boys. At that, the mother does confirm to me while chuckling, "Oh, he won't listen to me at all. He needs some discipline. That's why he's here." As if raising a monster is something to laugh about. That's when the boy asked me, "So when do I get a black belt like you have?" Now mind you, he's been punching the air the entire time. This boy is aggressively hyper. I tell him, well, it does take quite a while. I've been training since I was 5 and I earned my black belt at 21, so it did take a while. The boy, hearing that, says, "No, I don't want to wait that long. I want mine right now." That's when his mom motions me over and she says to me, "Listen, do you think you could give him one just to make him happy?" To which I say, "No, I'm sorry, he has to earn one. We're not a belt factory and I don't just give out black belts for fun." She then tells me, well, he never gets told no, so... I just stop her right there and say, "I'm sorry, but that's not how we do things here." She then says to me, "I have money. How much money do you want?" Again, I say, "I'm sorry, we only give belts when they're earned." So after several minutes of arguing and the conversation going nowhere, Karen snaps at me and says, "I paid you to give my son a black belt." She then stands up and she points a finger in my face. It was so sudden that I reflexively take a step back and I say, "Hey, chill out, lady." That's when some other parents chime in. And before I can reply to Karen, I hear a loud commotion behind me. I hear more parents and students shouting. I then turn and I see the new boy smacking and hitting a girl in the class and Kira shouting, "Hey, stop." However, this girl that the new boy's hitting is a purple belt and she's a little badass of her own. So she loads up a front kick and she kicks Brat in the center mass, right in his flappy stomach. The kid shouts and doubles over, crying tears of pain. Now, I didn't show any emotion, but I was so frickin' proud of her. That's when Karen screams, "Hey, that little bitch kicked my son. She hurt him." She then runs past me onto the mat and she gets in the face of the 14-year-old girl her son just attacked. This girl's already scared and she starts to cry. But Karen ups the ante and she shoves the girl in the chest with her hand, hard, knocking her to the ground. Kira gets between them and she's red-faced. I immediately rush over to try to defuse the situation, but neither of them are having it. The parents stand up and start shouting. The girl's father, who is with the other parents, yells at Karen, "Keep your hands off my daughter." He then starts approaching aggressively, but he backs off when he realizes that me and Kira, both black belts, are by her. Now, you should also know something about Kira. She's under 5 feet, less than 110 pounds soaking wet, but she can still kick ass up and down the mat on any given day. So Kira and Karen get into this shouting match with each other. I tell Karen to leave with your kid and don't come back, and don't you ever lay a hand on any of my students. Do you understand? I was genuinely pissed off. And Karen says, "F you, my son needs a black belt and you won't give him one." That's when Kira interjects and says, "Your son's crazy. He attacked our students." And oh boy, this set Karen off as she reaches and tries to slap Kira in the face. She's screaming, "Don't you dare call my son anything." And that was a huge mistake. Having had enough, Kira avoids the smack and she fires an absolutely vicious leg kick right into the meat of Karen's thigh, with nothing held back. The slap sound of Kira's shin bone decimating the side of Karen's thigh just echoed off the ceiling like a slab of meat getting thrown on the floor. It was glorious, but it gets worse from here. Karen starts screaming, "Oh my god, I was just attacked. Someone call the cops. I think this bitch broke my leg." So long story short, one of the parents called the police, and after interviewing everyone, they determined that Kira and myself acted in self-defense. Neither of us wanted to pursue assault charges against Karen, but the parents of the girl that Karen shoved rightfully felt different about it. So Karen was hauled away in handcuffs. Karen did say that she'll sue me and Kira in civil court, but since we have legal waivers, here's hoping nothing comes of that. As for the boy, I honestly feel bad. I felt like I could have helped turn him around. Maybe, maybe not. So yeah, that was my experience. And what a wild experience that was, right? And talk about adding insult to literal injury. Karen getting hauled off in handcuffs was the cherry on top, guys. But talk about entitlement, right? How much money do you want? My son wants a black belt. He doesn't want to learn how to fight, though. Like, guys, this is the same woman that says, "My son needs to learn discipline." But then she tries to shortcut her son to a black belt. Like, why not get him a fake one, Karen? That might have saved you some jail time. For some context, my brother is huge, like freakishly huge. The guy's a damn marvel of nature and a sight to behold if you don't expect to see him. He stands at just slightly over 7 feet when he's in boots, which he's always in because why not, right? At the time, he also weighed somewhere between 300 and 330 pounds. So in between terrorizing villages and kidnapping princesses, he was also going to culinary school full-time and working as a sous chef at a restaurant. Since he knows what he's doing and he doesn't have an attitude, he got promoted pretty quickly. And he was basically viewed by the staff and management as an unofficial manager. He got me a job there about a year after he starts working there. Now, despite being massive, my brother is the sweetest man that you'll ever meet. But because of his size, he's gotten a bit of a reputation as someone you don't want to mess with. So one night during summer, it wasn't too busy until a large party shows up and decides to make life hard for the staff. They all order a variety of steak, but no matter what was given to them, there was always something wrong with the dish. There were complaints like, "I asked for my steak rare, but this is way too rare." And my meal was supposed to come with a baked potato with cheese on the side, not in the potato. I want a completely new dish. Just that type of stuff. Complaint after complaint. So while the drunk adults were terrorizing the staff, their kids were terrorizing the customers, running around, screaming their heads off while climbing over tables and chairs. They also talked down to us, and they treated us like we had learning disabilities. when we had trouble dealing with their insane demands. They were loud, obnoxious, and berating to the young waitress assigned to them. But one in particular, a sweet 19-year-old girl of Japanese descent. She got the worst of it for daring to stop a child from playing so close near the kitchen. So the waitress basically says to the boy, "Sweetie, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to go back to your table. It's dangerous running around." The kid says, "But why? I want to play." She then goes on and says, "You can't be so close to the kitchen, sweetie. Somebody might step on you, or you could trip up a waiter or something." So at that, the kid goes back to the table to speak with his dad. And the guy stands up in a huff and barrels down towards the waitress. The guy starts screaming at her saying, "Excuse me? What did you say to my son?" The waitress tells him, "I just told him he shouldn't play so close to the kitchen, he could get hurt." At that, the dad says, "Who do you think you are speaking to my son like that? I want to speak to your manager. Clearly, this job is too hard for someone like you." The waitress begins to apologize, but he says, "I'm sorry, are you deaf and dumb? Or are your ears as slanted as your eyes?" And yes, he did say that because we all heard it. At this point, the sweet waitress just walks off in tears, and the dad goes back to his table with a smirk. Well, little does he know what's about to happen. So the waitress is in the back prep area crying her eyes out, with other employees trying to comfort her. And that's when my big brother sees this, and he asked what happened. Now, a part of the reputation he has is that he's extremely protective of the employees, especially the younger girls. And seeing how the restaurant isn't too busy, he asked the manager on duty if he could go speak to the customer who wanted to see the manager. The manager laughs and gives my brother the green light. After we all point out the guy, he walks up to the loud table, and one by one, each adult stops talking as they watch an angry giant get closer and closer to them. By the time he's standing at their table, he looks like a parent just staring down the kiddie table. My brother says, "You wanted to speak with a manager?" At that, the entitled dad stammers and says, "What?" My brother goes on and says, "You told your waitress, who's crying by the way due to something you said, that you wanted to speak with a manager. I'm the manager on staff. What can I help you with?" Hearing that, the entitled dad keeps stammering and says, "Well, no, I do, but..." My big brother then tells him, "We've been getting a lot of food sent back from this table. Is there an issue you guys have that you want me to fix for you?" The guy just says, No, the food is good and everything's fine, man." My big brother then proceeds to go to every person at that table, asking how their food is and if there's a problem he could help with. And not a single person says anything negative. All of them far too terrified by the shack-sized human being staring them down. He then finally gets back to the dad, and he stares at him unblinking, just watching him squirm in his seat. My big brother then says, "Now you, I have a bone to pick with you. You're the guy who made my 19-year-old waitress cry." The guy just continues to stammer, clearly intimidated by my brother's resting bitch face. The guy says absolutely nothing, as every adult at the table silently watches the man get browbeaten by my brother. The guy doesn't yell, doesn't curse, just stares at them, almost begging them to say anything. My brother then proceeds to an empty table and pulls up a chair, and he sits there watching the group continue their meal, in absolute silence for almost half an hour. He gets their check himself and watches as they pay, making sure none of them try anything stupid. Thankfully, we never see any of those people again. Guys, that is how you deal with a group of entitled people. Just terrify them. And honestly, I'm just glad to hear that OP's brother was frickin' massive, because I doubt it would have gone that way with a smaller sized manager. But with that said, how many of you think that Big Brother should have made the guy apologize to that waitress and make him explain that comment he made about her in front of the whole restaurant? The guy should have been publicly shamed for it. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's another r/entitled people episode, where a smug Karen demands money from an employee, and it does not go well, guys. Go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.